Hello and welcome to Leading. My guest on the program today is someone who has extensive and vast experience in political leadership, partisan politics, and political dialectics. At a very young age of 26, he was the youngest lawmaker in the old Oyo State House of Assembly. As far back as his student days, he was involved in drafting policy documents for one of the major national parties at the time. He's a two-term state commissioner, a former federal minister of telecommunications, a member of the National Political Reform Conference in 2005, and a founding member of the ruling All Progressives Congress National Party. Author, barrister at law, and community leader, Barrister Abdulrahim Adebayo Shittu. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
It's my pleasure to be here, and I want to thank you for bringing me on board today.
It's nice to have you, sir. Recently, your party, the All Progressives Congress, had its national convention. And before the convention, everybody thought you were the candidate to beat because of your pedigree, because of your antecedents, and also because of your qualifications. But then the results came out and you were not chosen at the consensus. How did that happen?
Well, the appropriate answers will come from those who, behind the scene, perfected, what eventually happened. The rule of the party was everybody who is interested should take forms, should buy forms, and which I did. And I was confident that having regard to my antecedents, my experiences, and whatnot, and my acceptability at the national level, that it will be my luck to get the position. More importantly, because Oyo State is one state where there's no APC governor, the logical thing was to have the most important position coming to the Southwest Zone to come to Oyo State, so that we have a strong position with which we can stamp our authority and with which we can even campaign, for subsequent elections. So we were almost confident. And I must say also, with all due respect and without any fear of being contradicted, that for the position to even come to the Southwest Zone, we played roles how to consult with a lot of people at the national level. When you go to the Southwest, I suspect that the governor of Osun, who would be going for another election in the next few months, felt that he needed to assuage or to buy over a political big wig, from Osun,
who may be a strong contender,
who incidentally happened to be Omishore, who had assisted, in the last election. He needed that position to be given to him, perhaps to make him feel more committed to ensuring and working for his own success. So I think he mobilized other Southwest APC governors to do his bidding. And, the painful thing at that time was, if there was going to be consensus, all of us ought to have been invited.
I was going to ask.
What I kept calling all the Southwest governors, none of them was picking my call.
Really?
None of them was picking my calls. And at the end of the day, we heard that there was, a consensus.
Was it the day of the supposed election?
Even before,
days to the election.
Before,
Were the contestants acquainted with the decision of the leadership?
There was no such
that
thing. It was very arbitrary, and it was unfortunate. They didn't. They just used their powers to appropriate or misappropriate the position to.
You were already at the venue.
Yes.
Awaiting.
Yes,
electoral materials.
I was campaigning. Interestingly, there were even electoral boxes. They were supposed to be,
electoral materials,
and I was happy going from one state delegation to the other, and, to perfect things.
So while you were doing that at the venue, the elders were holding meetings somewhere else?
Well, I don't know whether to call them elders. they were just in a more privileged position of being governors or being whatever. And,
But you must have tried to find out what went on behind the scene.
well, it became
What did
unnecessary.
you find out?
It became unnecessary because the deed had been done. A fait accompli had been imposed on us, and and that was followed by pleadings by people who are very well respected, who requested that I should just accept what had been done, particularly using the personality of Mr. President, who evidently has been my mentor.
That's one of the reasons why some people like us thought you will easily clinch it, because we know of your closeness with Mr. President.
I wouldn't know what arguments were proffered to Mr. President, because I was...
Maybe he had to succumb to please his followers.
Perhaps.
But did you try to find out what happened
It became
behind this?
unnecessary.
But who were the caucus that instigated or facilitated this consensus idea thing?
Well, I think it's come a fairly long way. Okay. It had been in practice even when it was not part of the Nigerian electoral laws.
Yes.
It had been because...
But this particular one, because from those of us who are pundits or observers on the sidelines, what we knew was that there was going to be a convention where elections will be held.
That was our expectation.
And then within a few hours, the story changed. A list was brought, was being read. There was a lot of drama. Some names were even mentioned, and somebody was protesting that, well, I never was called to anywhere.
You see, wherever,
And that's why people like us want to understand what were the processes that went on behind the scene.
One wouldn't know. People who will commit atrocities or who would, they will not give notice. And they will not do things in the open. You just see the end result of their game plans.
But isn't that the nature of politics?
Well, if you are saying now of Nigerian politics, perhaps.
Yeah, Nigerian politics.
But I feel certain that we in APC believe we are progressives. And I keep asking our people, if we are progressives, why are we not doing things differently from other political parties?
Coming up.
When the ministerial list was released and your name was not on the list, you were reported to have expressed that you were shocked.
I was shocked, certainly because of that. These things have always been, cropping up perhaps to show that it is an African problem or a Nigerian problem. So when you talk of Nigerian factor, a lot of people don't even care to ask what is the meaning of Nigerian factor. Nigerian factor is the corruption in our system. Nigerian factor is the DNA, which is peculiar to Nigerians of always trying to cut corners, instead of allowing merit to...
Could it be because of your outspokenness and activism in the past?
Well,
perhaps maybe you stepped on some big toes.
Well, it is possible. I don't know, but I don't have any regrets for anything I've done. In the days of Awu, I was a student of the Awu School of Politics, and I'm happy I graduated. One of the lessons is that political parties should have well-defined manifestos.
Okay.
To tell the public, the electorate, well ahead of elections, what they want to do when they get to political office, so that they can be judged by those well-defined manifesto.
That's like the marking guide.
Unfortunately, there's hardly, all our political parties now hardly have any well-defined, manifesto. Every governor does what he, thinks he wants to do.
So there's no compass.
Particularly, the concentration is always on what will bring them, ill-gotten money into their private pockets. And I felt that if I'm able to become secretary, it will be one of the innovations I'll be bringing on board, that our party must have a well-defined manifesto to be known for.
When the ministerial list was released at the president's second term, and your name was not on the list, you were reported to have expressed that you were shocked.
I was shocked, certainly because, number one, I believed I was very close to the president, having come all through the most trying time of even the presidential, ambition of General Muhammad Buhari. In office, I was also one of the most visible ministers. I was one of the most visible ministers. And I was about the best defender of Mr. President on radio and television. So when the thing came and my name was missing, of course, as any human being, I was shocked. But again, I said, well, the worst has happened, and the best can only be hoped for.
As we move forward.
As we move.
Did you try to engage with the president?
No, I didn't think it was necessary.
Perhaps just to find out if there were other variables aside these ones that gave you your conviction initially.
What I learned from very reliable sources close to the president at that time was, you will recall that in Oyo State we had an APC governor who was so scared of my taking over from him, and was used to saying that he could not afford to have a Buhari to be president and another Buhari, referring to Adebayo Shittu, to succeed him. And he was also known to say that if Shittu succeeds me, I'll be in jail, that kind of thing.
Well, you actually said you were going to put him in jail.
I could not have said that. I'm a lawyer, I'm not a judge. I never said that.
Oh, so
but it is
the report was
possible
not...
that my enemies may have gone to create fear in him. I never said that, but he had pathological fear of a Shittu's governorship, and he did everything to frustrate me. It was a result of the mismanagement of APC in Oyo State at that time that led to our loss in the elections. And when it happened, these same people who created the scenario leading to our loss still also went to Abuja to complain that it was Shittu who, ensured that the party did not lose. And people in Abuja never had the courtesy of even investigating, of calling me to inquire, to hear from my own side. And the next thing is they ensure that Mr. President did not, reappoint me. I'm happy that I had, 3.5 years of service as a minister, and I think my records are there.
So it wasn't because of the controversy and furore over your NYC certificate?
The NYC is not an issue. I keep saying this. It has never been an issue. The latest that has happened with regard to NYC is the Ogun State governor, who is today Governor Dapo Abiodun. He didn't serve. He got elected. When he won his election, his opponent filed an action at the Federal High Court in Abuja, in 2 different courts. And the court threw out the case that the Constitution of Nigeria did not specify NYC service as a precondition for holding political office.
Okay.
So that is the law.
So that couldn't have influenced the president against you?
Not at all. Not at all.
Now you have your own time. You are not encumbered by the officialdom of managing a party. Does that mean that you will be throwing your weight into the ring for the governorship election next year?
I've not made up my mind on it. On a more serious note, I think there must be serious things to think of now.
I think
there must be serious things to think of now. The environment really is not really encouraging, to say the least.
How do you mean? Because
the party has not done the needful to lay proper ground for us. A lot of the crises within the party are imposed from above. So for me, I have a number of issues that I'm still contending with. I also have a number of ambitions, which would be
outside partisan politics.
Yes, which would be of greater benefit to humanity.
When President Buhari was sworn in, you were reported to have expressed a conviction that this man is going to move Nigeria and erase all of these issues. Do you still have that same conviction now?
Well, yes, and I want to assure you that President Muhammadu Buhari has been doing his best. His best.
Is that best Is it good enough to give you that comfort that you had in 2015?
Coming up.
But is Nigeria more secured now than it was in 2015?
You cannot say Nigeria is more secure now because there's no doubt. The Yorubas have this adage. On any two, bani wo yewu. I've been in government for 3.5 years, and I know that in the circumstances that we found ourselves, because if you talk of a presidency, particularly with regard to, security and fighting insecurity, I mean, he's not the one to go out and confront, Boko Haram and confront bandits and all of that. We have the Nigerian Armed Forces, which itself is doing the best in the circumstance. Recall that within the short time that Buhari came on board, a lot of arms and ammunition, including Tucano, aircrafts, which had been budgeted for over the years and which the previous government, maladministered such budgetary funding. He got them in place and he got them for the armed forces to utilize. And that contributed largely to decimating or degrading Boko Haram. Recall also that at the time Buhari was coming on board, there was nothing like banditry, which we have in the Northwest. We didn't have it. We didn't have, kidnapping and all of that. These are recent, events and recent challenges. And I can assure you that the armed forces and the security forces are doing their best to contain them.
But is Nigeria more secured now than it was in 2015?
You cannot say Nigeria is more secure now because of new
emerging
challenges. If you have to think of the enormity of the problems of banditry, you would sympathize with the government.
Really?
You would sympathize.
But the people whose relatives and friends have been murdered will have difficulty sympathizing with the person they elected to protect their lives and property.
The truth must be told. Criminals would not give notice.
No, they won't.
And when it happens, government has to start planning, particularly the armed forces.
Are you satisfied with the response of the government to the series of criminal activities that we've witnessed nationally in the last 7 years?
You see, it will be very difficult to really give a response, a yes or no response, because we don't know the challenges. It is the armed forces are paid and they have a constitutional role to play. For us to be able to assess them, for us to be able to appreciate that even they are putting their lives on the line, fighting unknown enemies. It's not a conventional war that is being fought. It's not a conventional war. And you are fighting people who are almost completely illiterate, almost who are, people who are fatalistic, who don't care for their lives, perhaps because they live very hopeless lives over the years, and who perhaps are rebelling against age-old inter-ethnic oppression and conflict, particularly in the Northwest.
Well, since you want to stay away from assessing the response of the government, I will let that slide. But something that's related to banditry, to kidnapping, to ritual killing, abduction, and all manner of violent criminality across the nation.
Yes.
Not only in the Northwest, everywhere.
Yes.
And it's been on the rise, we both agree, in the last 7 years under the watch of our Commander-in-Chief presently. Something that some experts have identified is an instigator, a major instigator is economic impoverishment. Would you...
Partly.
Yes. How would you assess the performance of this government economically?
Well,
because let me give you the list of the things that got you excited that time, going by that report. You talked about insecurity, that you are confident that in little time, this will be eradicated by the president. Unemployment, corruption, economic regression or retrogression, impunity, poor power generation, refineries, the subsidies, that all of these things will be addressed by the president.
You see,
So I want to know,
yes,
7 years after, are you still excited the way you were in 2015?
Number one, let me say straight away, I'm not here to represent the government because
Definitely.
I don't work for government now.
You are a thought leader.
Number two is I don't have all the indices. If we want to do justice to these issues, we need to have enough time to be able to identify them, seek responses and reactions from appropriate officers in government to let us know what government has done on each and every one of these. To just ask me here, impromptu, to reply to government's reactions on each of these things would be most unfair. So I want to believe that perhaps you should give enough notice to the Minister of Information or the Minister of,
If I may interject, if you will permit me. You are a thought leader by any stretch. And you are a public affairs.
As a thought leader, I can only engage in guesses, conjecture, particularly when I don't have authoritative and recent information on these issues.
So you would not be willing to assess?
It would be unfair on those to be assessed if without information. I mean, if you ask,
before this government came, you were doing that in media circles as a public affairs commentator.
Again, on public affairs projections and all of that. But now government has been in place and there have been people put in charge of each of these responsibilities. And there's need for anybody who will make public comment on them to seek their reactions before. Otherwise, at my level, it would be stupid of me to just,
You were in government for 3.5 years. So you work closely in the federal executive. You perhaps will be able to tell us what are the constraints of the president and his team.
Well,
because the scorecard on the street is that the president's performance has been woeful. That's the scorecard on the street. To address
these issues are honestly too serious to be, left in the hand of somebody who does not, as of today, have authoritative information. I left office about 3 years ago. And I think
while you were in office, what were the constraints experienced by the president?
Well, one of the constraints, particularly in the area of finance, was the fact that before Buhari came on board as president, oil was selling for about $100 plus.
Sure.
By the time we came on board, oil, the price had gone down to about $27. And with increasing responsibilities, increasing expenditures. That certainly will create a lot of gaps and all of that. But despite that, I'll give an example.
Please.
The last budget of the Jonathan administration on federal roads, the last budget was 19 billion naira on federal roads. 19 billion naira. I can tell you that not one kobo of it was even spent on any federal road. The monies were simply put on the table and shared among political leaders then. But the first budget of Buhari on federal roads was 265 billion. And that resulted to the resumption of work on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which had been abandoned for more than 10 years before then. Resumption of work on Oyo-Ogbomosho Road. Resumption of work on Lagos, Sangwota, Abeokuta Road, and in all other zones. So these are things that one would proudly associate with the Buhari government.
It strikes me.
Been able to do that in the first year, I mean, certainly there would have been improvements on a yearly basis.
So you're willing to appraise the scorecard of the president in infrastructural development?
Of course, he has done more. In the history of Nigeria, no government has done near what Buhari has done.
But you wouldn't be willing to appraise him on security?
No, on security, because security issues are issues that you can really not pin down. Security issues are not issues because you don't know what is happening. You also know very well that even security budgets are not always in the open. You don't know how many soldiers are involved. You don't know how many soldiers are being killed. You don't know how many aircrafts are being deployed and all of that. These are specialized issues. And then if you're talking of routes, for instance, you can say the totality of Nigerian routes are maybe 100,000 kilometers or 200,000. You cannot say the same thing with regard to how many bandits are springing up by the day and how many, interdictions are occurring here and there and so on. So it's a more cloudy thing, and you require, expert security knowledge before.
I found a report somewhere where you said before you got into government, I think, that you don't support negotiation with bandits.
Ordinarily, I would not support it. I would not support it. Let me tell you. It doesn't make sense to me because banditry is a criminality.
True.
And if you commit a crime, you deserve punishment. So, I mean, it will be unheard of. It will seem illogical to be, if you could do that, then you could as well, take on armed robbers, rapists, and so on, and say you start negotiating with them.
So if you do not support negotiation with bandits because they're criminal elements, some would want to say, while you were in government at the Federal Executive Council, what was your position? Did you express this position?
Issues like this will not be brought to the Federal Executive Council.
Okay.
I mean, the Federal Executive Council is not a council of, discussing just everything. They are for policy issues with regard to approvals, budgetary approvals, policy approvals, and all of that. So nobody will start to come and discuss the issue which only the security personnel, would have to take decisions on and then bring them to,
But some would say that out of policy and human life, which should take preeminence.
Of course, human life will take preeminence, but I'm telling you that it would not be, in the line to bring the issues of bandits, when it is the security forces who should have a, constitutional responsibility and who would know the best method. How many of us in the cabinet would have information about how the security people should behave or should operate? So not all those issues, not every issue is brought to the cabinet meetings.
But did you have moments where you went to the president to say, Commander-in-Chief,
I did.
These are the things that
portfolio.
No, in your personal relationship with him.
Mr. President is such a busy person. You don't just go to him just for the fun of it, particularly because it is not part of my responsibility. It is the responsibility of perhaps the National Security Advisor or the Minister of Defense to go and discuss security issues with Mr. President. You don't become, a jack of all trades and master of none to be interfering with the issues that does not concern, your responsibility as a minister.
But you will be concerned that the man whom you're so loyal to,
I'm not the only one loyal to him.
Whom you've been...
I could not have been the only one loyal to him.
Yeah, but you will be concerned that in his government...
It was not my responsibility.
Barrister Abdul Rahim Adebayo Shittu, author, legal practitioner, public administrator, community leader. Thank you so very much for honoring our invitation.
It's my very big
for
pleasure.
Coming to share these illuminating insights. Thank you so much.